Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cranked and Ranked. I say welcome back because this is the second part of a two-parter. But I don't know why. I don't know why I expect people to listen to or watch things in order. Like, I think it's because like that's how my brain works. And so I go, well, I can't possibly listen to part two if I haven't heard part one. But I know not everybody has the same hangups that I have. So welcome to Cranked and Ranked, the podcast and YouTube show where me and my friend Eddie over here, we rank rock, metal, other kinds of music discographies. But these two episodes have been very metal, and yes. And honestly, I'm surprised because we were chatting about this early on. The YouTube video of the part one of Sepultura surpassed 2,000 views in less than 4 days.
Yeah.
And our most popular video only has a little bit over 1,000 views. And that's from months and months back, months of, being on YouTube. So I just want to thank everybody that's been watching, because that doesn't sound like a lot, but for us it is.
Yeah.
I know you watch a lot of videos on YouTube and it says, 200,000, and that's why those people are important and we're not. But on the podcast side of things, I'm not really sure. We seem to like always have the same amount of people listening, which is fine. And I want to give some quick shout outs, because in the last episode, I was like, who actually listens to the podcast version of this? And I got a whopping 5 responses to my email address, oldheadpodcast@gmail.com. If you ever just want to drop me a line, I don't care. I don't get a lot of emails. I am really bad at responding though, because I hate texting and writing and typing. I hate it so much because I can't ever get my thoughts together. So there are some people that can write a really long, very well stated, well thought out, entertaining email or text message, and it's great. But then I try to do it and I'm just like, I don't know what to fucking say. So my responses are always, yeah, that's cool, thanks, bye, because that's just how I am. But that doesn't mean that
accompanied with a Bill and Ted lick in there.
Yeah. But I wanted to give some shout outs to the people that did respond, saying their podcast listeners. If I get this first name wrong, I apologize. Ciaran Bourke, it's CIARAN BOURKE. And cool, then Tom Thurston. Tom Thurston is an OG. He's been around for a bit. James Ellis, he says he listens at the gym. So dude, I didn't know that we would be good for that kind of thing, but that's kind of cool, because when I think of like working out, the times that I've worked out, which is very few, mind you, I've had like driving music on, hip hop or metal or something that with a steady beat. But I guess he gets some sort of of adrenaline rush from the amount of times I say I don't know. Or maybe we should just narrowcast straight to him. Like, are you working out right now? Come on, you got this, man. You got it.
Hell yeah.
One more.
Hell
yeah. And anyway, so that was James Ellis. Duncan Evans also responded saying he was a podcast listener. And Nick Gadman double dipped, because he responded to tell me that he was a podcast listener. And then again, with a really long, very, very thoughtful sort of take on a few of our episodes and how they relate to him as a fan. And I like that kind of shit, because honestly, like the people that I want to be in contact with when it comes to, people who are listeners or viewers or other YouTubers like yourself, Eddie, I always lean towards the ones that present things in a very thoughtful way, like they're Like they really think about what they're talking about, and it's not some knee jerk thing, or it's not them being dicks or them being elitists or them being, I don't know, trying to be too hip or whatever. Because there's a lot of that out there. But Nick Gadman's not one of those. He did a very long email talking about a few of our episodes, and they were all great points. And I like getting that kind of shit. So feel free. Anybody that wants to send anything, or just put long ass comments in the YouTube video if that's where you're watching this. We appreciate you guys too.
Hell yeah, we do.
Yeah, as usual, old head. I'm your host. With me as always, Eddie Sparxx. Hello, sir.
Hey, that was a really puberty A.
That's one of those things that you want to get right. Like the Fonz never had his voice crack when he did that. He was always.
For me, it's always like it consistently, like it's probably the only consistency in my life that the voice cracks at the exact moments I don't want it to. I can speak perfectly normal the rest of the time, and then all of a sudden, someone particularly attractive will say something. Hey, how are you today? Oh, I'm great, thank you. It's like,
or in a particularly intimate setting where you're just like, baby, you want to make love?
Yeah, been there.
It doesn't really get any better. It's like my voice still does weird stuff. It just does different weird stuff now.
Yeah, yours goes like an octave lower, where it's like, yeah. So anyway, I was talking. mine just has a spaz attack and goes to the shadow realm.
So yes, if for some reason, if we're getting a whole bunch of viewers of this particular video, because it is Sepultura Part 2, thank you for joining us. And on the first one, I had some nitpicky things to say about their albums, and some of them I think are very warranted. But we're now doing the top 7 Sepultura albums, and I can safely say that this is nothing but bangers. Like all 7 of the albums that I'm going to talk about are amazing albums to me. And so putting them in order, especially my bottom 3, those were really rough because they're so close together to me that I'm just like, I came up with a ranking that I'm happy with. But at the end of the day, the thing to, I guess that will be apparent is that Sepultura are one of the best metal bands ever.
Yeah.
And whether you prefer the Max Cavalera days or the Derek Green days, you have to admit that even whatever you take it as, even if you're just focusing on those first albums, it's still some of the best metal that's ever been done. And you got to give them props for continuing and keeping it going and not giving up. And I don't know. It's just it's inspiring to me, even if I haven't been on board with everything they've done. I look at it and go, well, you know what? They didn't really sacrifice quality. It seems like most of the time there's a lot of effort put in the things that they do. And you can't say that about a lot of metal bands. There's a lot of metal bands that have been around for years and years and years and will trot out the same old bullshit all the time. And everybody just eats it up, except for me. I eat up some of it, a little bit of it. Anyway, I decided to change it up. I always have records behind me. Sorry, podcast listeners. I always have records behind me. And this time I was like, I've got a couple like cool 12 inches. So I'm going to throw them up there. I have the Altered State 12-inch that's got Orgasmatron and the re-recording of Troops of Doom on it. Damn. And then this is the Territory 12-inch, which has Policia and Biotech is Godzilla on it.
Whoa.
And then, of course, I had to represent Derek Green with the mediator between head and hands must be the heart, because it's a great album, which I will talk about on this episode. And I left up Roots because I think Roots needs more love. So
fair.
I know a lot of people love that album, but I think more people should. So let's let's jump right into it. We've covered a lot of ground last time. It was literally like, I feel like, it was like an epic episode. So maybe this one will be the same thing. We're starting off with number 7, working down to number 1. And so let's just get this fucking ball rolling, sir. Eddie Sparxx, what is your number 7 Sepultura album?
Okay, so my number 7 Sepultura album is Morbid Visions.
Okay. All right.
There is, of course, glaring issues with the production of this album.
Yeah.
However, there's pairing the geography of the band in these early days, with the fact they didn't have nearly the budget.
No.
And probably also didn't have some of the know-how as well, in terms of like recording guitars, making sure they're tuned. But there is something kind of charming about how they made the heaviest, craziest shit that they could at that time.
Yeah.
In that kind of climate. Because like 1986, heaviest stuff coming out was, maybe something like Slayer, Dark Angel, Possessed, that sort of stuff. But, Sepultura comes out and they're like, we want to do all of that. And just comes out of the gates with this fucking thing that just rips your face off, dude. It's like Morbid Visions opening title track. It's absolute chaos. Mm-hmm. Mayhem is, does what it says on the
absolute
tin.
Mayhem.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. Third track, Troops of Doom. I know you and I have criticized bands for re-recording their material.
Yeah.
But that usually applies to like 15 to 20 years down the line when they do a greatest hits album, but they re-record all the songs, so all the charm is gone. Yeah. However, this, as you said, with the re-recorded version of Troops of Doom, like when I listen to this one, it's like all of the tempos in this version of Troops of Doom just feel off. And I know they were probably thinking, oh, we need something to vary up the pace a bit after those two nutters. But I got to say, the re-recorded version of Troops of Doom, chef's kiss.
Yeah. Also, I don't have a problem with the way that they did it because they re-recorded Troops of Doom and it was just put out. I mean, I think it first came out on this single back here. And then it was tacked on to Schizophrenia, because it was recorded in 1990. So the fact that it wasn't considered an album track, they weren't just I'm okay with that. In fact, I'm okay with bonus tracks in general. I just wish, I'll get into this a little bit later, more in depth, but I wish that bonus tracks were always separate. Like, because especially when we're doing these rankings, because sometimes you'll be all like, oh, there's this album and it ends on this track, and I'm like, it doesn't end on that track. Keep those fucking things separate. Yeah. So I just wish that they would do that. Like, just especially in this day and age, you don't need to tack it onto an album because everybody can access all your shit. Yeah. So, but anyway, and I know a lot of it has to do with them releasing these, expanded edition or whatever, things. But I just wish that bonus tracks were put on an EP or a single or something like that. But yeah.
Fair. It again though, like that version is the masterpiece it deserved to be. Like when I hear Troops of Doom, this version, I think, damn dude, this really came into its own a few years later. But and then following it up with War, like people always talk about Possessed and Death for pioneering death metal in the 80s, but like this was some next level shit for 1986. This is heavy and absolutely insane. Crucifixion, like 80s Sepultura always struck me as the next logical step from Slayer, and no album shows it off more than this one. Again, it's a band in its infancy, finding its way, but there again, like I said, there's something so charming about the shittiness of this record, but I can't help but love it. It's
kind of how I feel about the first Carcass record. Sounds like absolute shit, but I love the fact that it sounds that way. I wouldn't do it any other way.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you should mention that because I'm sure there's a riff in here somewhere. Yeah, yeah. There's a riff I'll talk about that. It talks about something from that Carcass album. That's
Okay.
funny. Things are coming together here. Shimmer the Wrath. That's a nasty slow riff. That's a fuck yeah from me. Funeral Rites. It's a good thing I'm basically a veteran of album listening at this stage in the game because, like I say, I recognize the greatness here, but fuck, the production is bad.
Yeah.
And like, this is coming from someone with an 80s bias too. But, oh man, Empire of the Damned, it baffles me that a vocalist can make that sound and still be able to speak. Like, the dude's got an iron larynx, dude. Like, it's insane that Max has made that sound and has not had to have some major like neck amputation or something.
I mean,
But
he's lucky. Some people, I mean, some people's vocals, they take a beating and they don't really. They all of a
yeah,
sudden, you know, they're on tracks doing e.
hanging from the rope, the body just twitches there. Still cracking me up, dude.
It's fucking great. Anyway,
Yeah, it's great stuff. Rough production. If you're into that,
yeah.
this is the one for you. Like, this is the sort of like I got a big chromium
that was an odd pause.
sorry.
I've got a big.
Yeah,
we know, Eddie. We know.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I don't like to brag. But yeah, I got kind of a chromium dioxide vibe off this album. It's just very metal, you know.
Oh, I'm sure he likes this one. And it was my dead last album for reasons that I explained. I do like it, but I like it because it's the beginnings of Sepultura. I don't really like. I think, like I said, if it wasn't a Sepultura album, I probably wouldn't have listened to it ever again. The interesting thing though is that I wasn't aware of it at the time because I was young at that point. 86, I was 8 or something like that. So not listening to metal, especially extreme stuff like this, but there's that thing where a lot of people will say, oh, it was really influential. And I'm like, did anybody outside of Brazil even hear this album until years later? Because I'm pretty sure they didn't have the distribution. And, I'm sure there was some underground tape trading and stuff like that. And some people did hear it, obviously. But there's an alarming amount of people who all claim that, like, I heard it in 86, man, and it changed my life. It was, important to death metal and black metal. I'm like, was it? Because that's kind of an after the fact kind of thing. But yeah, it's a fun album. I'm not. I mean, like I said last time, like if that's the sound that you're wanting, then that's fine. But as a Sepultura album, it's not good for me. as an album, if that's what you're going into music for, then God help you, I guess. But I'm not one of them. But it's an important part. Like we say in a lot of episodes, without the first album, we're not talking about anything. So, are you done with that one?
Pretty much, yeah. You're
cool.
number 7. Go
cool.
For it.
I'm literally gonna go the complete opposite end of the discography for my number 7, the 2020 album Quadra.
Sweet.
Which that was God. It's been 2 years since this album came out. That is, man. This pandemic thing is just like
it's wild,
weird. It's the time has become a thing that it's almost meaningless now. Like anything that came out
time
between
is
20
thing of the past.
Yeah.
Like I am taking that. That's my album. That's my album name.
Time is a thing of the past.
Yeah.
As long as there's a picture on the inside of you, like really contemplating life under a tree or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, Quadra came out in 2020, and it's their 15th album, most recent album, and once again, as a lot of their later albums with Derek Green, it has a concept, which apparently is based on numerology revolving around the number 4, and it's the album is split up with 4 sections of 3 tracks each, with different vibes. I think there's a heavy vibe. There's the one with the more tribal stuff. There's a techie one and a proggy, and then one that's a little bit more mellow. They all kind of intermingle though, where it's not a division where you go, wow, everything got really slow. it's not really like that. But I remember I think before the album came out, I read a little bit about that. I'm like, okay, great concept. Now give me the fucking songs. And they're there on this fucking album. That's the thing. Now obviously, if you've been paying attention, Quadra comes in lower than the previous 2 albums, because to me, it's just not as good overall, but it does maintain the high level of quality that they have been putting out over the past few albums, where I talked about this last time. I don't know if it is a coincidence or if there was an inspiration there, but as soon as Eloy Casagrande became their drummer, something happened with the quality of the shit they were doing, where it went from, oh, this is good, to like, whoa, dude. And like, that's just the only thing that's changed. Eloy came in, who's a phenomenal drummer. Unfortunately, I don't know if you read, but he broke his foot. And he had to sit out I think the last few American dates. They had to get a different drummer. And I know that probably broke a lot of people's hearts, because like that dude rules. And so it's like, oh no, now we see them with somebody else, who I'm sure was fine. But that's a motherfucker when you do something like that on tour.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, Quadra. So the reason why this ends up being number 7 and not higher, because it's got a whole lot of good shit on it, is that this was, out of the last 3 albums, the one where I found myself listening to riffs and going, that's very Sepultura-y. Like something that maybe has been on something else, but it's always kind of sprinkled in with some other badass shit. It's just that there's more moments on this one where I go, I feel like they kind of did that one before, which is, I mean, at album 15, yeah, you're going to repeat yourself from time to time, but the albums that came before this, I'll talk about in a little bit. And there's less of that happening. And honestly, on this particular album, it doesn't really matter, because they keep things moving on this album. Like, it really blows by for an album that I think it's pretty long, 45, 50 minutes, something like that. Which to me is pretty long. If it's over 45 minutes, it's too long. But this one doesn't feel that way. There's like tons of cool ideas all over this album. I do have to admit though that I said the last time I sat down to listen to it, I just sort of was trying to remove myself from the concept and listen to it. And I really think that if it hadn't been explained, I wouldn't have really understood that it was divided in 4 different sections. It's not really that obvious to me. But it's a great album. And the big thing that I have to say, since we're going to be talking about a few albums from modern Sepultura, with these last 3 albums that they've done, Mediator, Machine Messiah, and then Quadra, with these 3 albums, they have, in my opinion, now become a band that can compete with their classic albums. They don't, I said this before, they should go on a tour where they don't play any of that shit, because now with the back catalog of stuff with Derek and the quality of these last 3 albums, they don't need it anymore. They've become as good. Unfortunately, there's like this. Like, here's what Sepultura does now. I think maybe, like you said, this answers right on top of it with the classic Sepultura, because I just think that if you're taking a step back and I'm trying to remove myself personally from it and just listen to the quality of what they're doing and the songwriting and the chances they're taking, they've become an amazing band that's
in their own.
They don't, unfortunately, it's always going to be there because they're still called Sepultura, but they can compete with that old stuff now. And they could just leave it behind if they wanted to. And I would happily go see that concert. And I really think what they did prior to that was, I think that they had set too many boundaries for themselves. I don't know if it was on purpose, but I think they were trying to be like, oh, we've established this Sepultura sound, So we kind of work in this area now, especially once we got to Quadra with some of the things that happen on this album. I feel like they're a band that has endless possibilities now. Yeah. And I'm now very excited for whatever they're going to do, because I'm confident that I'm going to hear stuff on whatever album comes after where I go, I did not expect that. And that's great. That's all I want out of a band, is just give me something on an album where I stop whatever I'm doing, and go, whoa, that was cool. That's all I really want. And there's a lot of that on all of these 7 albums that we're going to talk about. But yeah, Quadra, I think another thing about it is that it just came out essentially. So it hasn't had a whole lot of time to prove itself. So I had to put it at number 7, because I'm like, well, 2 or 3 years from now, what if this one just doesn't have the same punch that it did when I first heard it? So yeah, really great album. I would honestly say it's not a bad place to start if you're somebody who is a little weary of non-Max Cavalera Sepultura, and you're always kind of like, well, I don't even know where to begin. Quadra is not a bad place to start and just work your way backwards, really. Because it's an absolute quality metal album, way better than what most metal bands are doing these days. So there you go, number 7, Quadra. See, I even my number 7, I'm like, killer album, number 7.
Cool. So my number 6 is Dante 21. Is it?
Oh, Dante. I think Dante 21, or let's just call it Dante.
Cool.
Yeah, that's also that's another. I like how you've got 2 already that were in the lower half. Wait, that was my bottom 2, wasn't it? My bottom 2 were the 2 you're talking about here. All right, cool. Let's do it.
Cool. So, there it is again. The I sound like that fucking nerdy fry cook from The Simpsons. Would you like fries on that, sir? But yeah, cool. It's a concept album. One of quite a few concept albums they've done.
Yeah.
And this one is based on Dante Alighieri. Is that how I say it? The Divine Comedy.
Dante's Inferno or whatever.
Yeah. So basically, at the stage I was at with listening to these albums in succession, we'd camped out in the Roots zone, as I call it, where it's like Roots happened and then they just did various subtle takes on that, and then all of a sudden, following Roarback, which was my bottom pick, it was so refreshing to hear songwriting that went back to a little bit more thrash at points, despite still having the groove in there. I'm a dive right in.
Do it.
So, Lost intro is this cool spooky chant radio kind of thing.
I gotta say, man, they are a band that loves intros. They may love intros more than any band in existence. Intros and interludes, like they love them.
I'm going to make a playlist, and it's just exclusively intros and interludes of Sepultura songs.
I'm going to make a whole album of songs that have intros that build up and then don't go anywhere, and it just starts over, and it's just literally building up. It's going to be called Edging.
That's fucking funny, dude.
Living on the edge.
That is also a clever name.
Well, I mean, it's, maybe that's what that Aerosmith song is all about. It's about bringing yourself close to climax. I'm trying not to be dirty, folks. I don't know who's listening out there.
It's a perfectly normal thing. Let's drop the knob talk and let's talk about some fucking songs.
Yeah, all right. No more knobs.
No more knobs. Cool. Dark wood of error. It's not a good start, is it?
Yep. No more knobs except for dark wood.
Yep.
So
Love a bit of the wood. So yeah, I'm already getting some thrash Cavalera era vibes back here, and
yeah.
it was at this point I thought, oh shit. I'm kind of with you on the production. I do think the production is pretty thin, but
Yeah.
at this point, from a song perspective, however, I was like, this is really exciting. After 4 albums of very similar stuff, with the odd weird from out of nowhere thing thrown in every now and again.
Yeah.
But then Convicted in Life could have been on Chaos AD. Love it.
Yeah.
City of This sounds like a psyched out version of Pure Massacre by Silverchair at the start. I don't know if you heard it, but
Yeah.
like that riff, like ring 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 ring, that sort of thing. I like that.
Man,
False.
when are we doing Silverchair? Put that on the list. Silverchair. That's when we got to do.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
That is an interesting discography. If you've ever heard all of their shit, like where they go from first album to last album, that is a journey. So
yeah, let's we'll add that to the list.
cool.
Might get around to it this season. Who knows? False. You get like a full on hardcore vibe here, and then holy shit, there's an orchestra, which is really cool. Fighting On is a groovy fucker. Limbo intro is just cool string parts. Ostia.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care. This song's fucking good. I love the bendy riffs. Buried Words, brutal punky riffage. Nuclear 7, vibey chuggage. Repeating the Horror. Love the outro of this song. There's awesome percussion parts going on. Intro. Clever little string tremolo intro to Crown and Mitre.
Mm-hmm.
That ascending breakdown in the middle was just premium mosh material, which leads us to Premium Mobile intro. Intro. The fourth and final intro of the album.
Yeah.
Still Flame is a very cinematic final track. Like, I like that they kind of brought back their thrash groove sound, but flirted with the orchestral elements quite a decent amount on here too. Is a very good album in my opinion. I liked it for its the thing that attracts me to early Sepultura is the variation in like tempos. Like they will hit you with something blisteringly fast, but also follow that up with something just so slow and nasty that it just like it's like one riff face to another riff face where the fucking riff frown is like coming off of your jaw. Like and I love that. So yeah, it's an exciting album.
That's going to be one of those things that like when a lot of us are going to get old and we're going to have like major frown lines and it'll be like, were you just angry all the time? No, I listen to a lot of really good metal.
You ever heard Inner Self? This is how we ended up here.
I really do think with Dante, because I like things about it, and I really think that if they hadn't done anything else like it after it, I might feel differently about it. But the fact that they followed it up with Alex, which I feel is superior in a lot of ways, and not also a concept, it kind of ruined Dante for me. So that's why I had it lower.
Fair. So that was my number 6.
Awesome.
Take the helm.
Awesome. I'm heading back to more modern times for my number 6. My number 6 is Machine Messiah from 2017, the album prior to Quadra, the 14th album, second of the Eloy trilogy. I'm going to call them. Like I said earlier, like my bottom 3 here, 7, 6, and 5 are so close together for me that it's really difficult. But I just this is the order that I ended up with, and it makes sense. My favorite thing about Machine Messiah is the opening track. Like that I don't think they've ever started an album with a song like this. And every time I hear the album, I go, That is so good. It's Derek singing, and it's a real moody song, but that's the thing, is that when they let Derek, I don't know if they're letting him or if they're presenting music that inspires him to do different kinds of things, but when he has room to sing or do different types of things with his voice, he really stands out as a great vocalist. It's when they just throw him in there and say, you do your yelly stuff all the time, that I kind of go, then it's not very unique to me. But clearly he has so much more to offer as a vocalist, and you hear it on a lot of these later albums.
Yeah.
And I just love the fact that it's like that harkens back. The first song harkens back to what I love about early Sepultura, which is that they didn't give a fuck. Like they did a thrash album followed by a more groovy stripped down album, followed by an even more groovy tuned down. Like they weren't in the game to please a genre. You know, they just were, these are the things that come out of us. And that makes me, I love it when they do things like this. Now, the second track on Machine Messiah gets a little bit more average, but that's okay, because once track 3 comes in, it brings it right back in. So this album to me is very, very, very strong. I think the only thing that keeps this from even being higher than number 6 is it's a little bit push and pull for me. It feels like the flow of the album something is not right. The songs maybe need to be in a different order, or not. Maybe it's just me, but there'll be things where I go, holy fuck, followed by a song where I go, pretty good. And it's almost like whiplash. Like the highs on Machine Messiah are so high that the songs that are just good songs, it kind of makes you go, oh, okay. But I mean, you can't expect them to keep that momentum going the whole fucking time. That'd be insane. But this album is just very enjoyable from beginning to end. But like I said, it does kind of push and pull. But at this point, you know, now that we've got 3 albums under the what I consider the, you know, current version of Sepultura, it really does seem like somewhere around 2012, everybody in Sepultura took some mind expanding drugs.
Yeah.
And they all just went, we could do more. And they just haven't looked back ever since. And they've just been fucking killing it. This one, we talked about it last time. This has Iceberg Dances on it, which is like, that's another case of them doing a song where I'm like, I don't think I've heard them do anything like this before. Sure, they've had proggy elements before, but this just prog instrumental, it's just fun as fuck, man. And I absolutely love it. So anyway, I don't know. Overall, it's a killer album. There's none of these albums have any filler or any songs that I would necessarily cut from them. Even ones that we'll talk about in a little bit that are like really long. When looking at each song individually, I go, I don't know which one needs to be removed. I have no idea. But yeah, I would say overall, this one it's great, but there's a cohesiveness to my number 5 that blows this one out of the water. Now, I'm going to get to a gripe now about this album, but it doesn't have anything to do with this album. It has to do with what I mentioned a little bit earlier. Don't put bonus tracks on an album, because the album ends with Cyber God. That is the last song on the album. There's another version now that's out that has an extra song, which is fine, and then a fucking cover of an old TV show theme song. And it ruins the momentum of the album. It really like it's perfectly fine. Like, put out a little EP or a single called Here's Another Song and a cover that we did. Boom. Because it's, for some reason, because I'm one of those weird people that still listens to albums as an album experience. And this whole album has this whole vibe of like, man, there's so much amazing shit. And then just ending it on, is it Ultra 7? Is the name of the show, I think.
Yeah.
And it's so just like, are they having a laugh, as they say in your country? Are they having a laugh?
Having a laugh, mate? You're the fucking laugh.
So I wish that, because there are a lot of people out there who aren't as picky as me and don't even really care to look at the track listing, and they'll just be like, oh, the last song on the album is this cover. I'm like, no, it's not the last song on the album. Stop it. So I really want to become in charge of like that kind of thing. I want to be the curator of music worldwide for everything. It has to run through me. Like, here's the album. No, don't do that. Like, you see, I'm going to be, it's a stamp of approval from Old Head saying, look, the album is great when you end it right here. Let's don't do any more than that.
And I'm going to be the one person above him that keeps the cover of Easy on Angel Dust.
I'll let you go with that one, because at least that, I don't know. That's the only way you've heard it. But you see what I'm saying? Like imagine if you hadn't heard it that way and it ended on Midnight Cowboy. Like, it's just, you know, so I just I feel like it's irresponsible to put extra tracks on albums. Just don't. So don't do it. But other than that, Machine Messiah fucking kills. And so let's move on to number 5.
It does indeed kill. So my number 5 are in the top 5 now. People.
Top 5 Sepultura albums, or as when I was in high school, there was a girl who was nothing about her said metalhead. She was literally like the epitome of cheerleader, with blonde hair, makeup, dresses, and real not posh as they would say on your side, but they would be called preppy over here. They were preps. And she for some reason owned a shirt for Arise. They had the Arise album cover on it. And I just remember, like, I wasn't going to say anything to her, because even in high school, I was kind of a dick sometimes, but I was just like, I don't even want to get into a conversation about this. But I remember somebody else saying, like, you know, I didn't know that you were into that band. She was like, oh, I love Sepultura. And I'm just like, get the fuck out of here. But it was really interesting that she just randomly had an Arise t-shirt, and she was, you know, all the rest of the time she was in Stussy and Massimo and all of those brands that probably, I don't know, does anybody wear those things anymore? Abercrombie and Fitch. No, that wasn't around when I was in high school.
Or for Abercrombie.
Anyway, so I always think of that when I say Sepultura, because I've heard other people say Sepultura, and I guess it's close enough. But when you're a teenager into metal and so many people are picking on you because you're into metal, and there's this one rando preppy girl who's like, Sepultura, I'm like, take that fucking shit off. Not just because I'm really interested in seeing what's underneath it, but also I really want you to just get rid of that shirt. Anyway, it was high school. It was all about, like, when am I going to see some boobs? Come on. I kind of miss the innocence of that time, because there was no internet. You know, like, it was more special when you saw boobs back then.
I concur.
And we've had knobs and boobs in this episode.
Yeah, we got 2 more things we got to take off: butts and the front butt.
All right. Where were we?
We are
number 5.
We are on my number 5.
Yeah.
Cool. We got my Quadra is my number 5.
Quadra, nice.
Yeah. This album, I feel, got kind of a raw deal as a result of the pandemic. Can you imagine if they got to tour this shit? Damn.
Well, I mean, they are now, but I mean,
but
2 years later,
been
basically,
out for a while.
Yeah.
Isolation is a pretty killer opener and pretty apt for 2020.
Yeah.
And then immediately followed up by Means to an End. Now, hear me out. Did you also hear this? I'm pretty sure that riff is Genital Grinder by Carcass, except you can tell what is going on.
Oh.
I
mean, it's pretty close.
It's conceivable that 2 bands can write a similar riff,
Oh
But I
yeah,
just thought
for sure.
I thought it was interesting to bring up.
I mean, it wasn't
Which is funny
obvious
that you
enough.
brought them up.
It wasn't obvious where before you mentioning it, I didn't hear it. But now I'm like, now I got to go play those back to back.
To be fair, that's like the only riff I can hear on that album. But yeah, Last Time is a brutal techie thrasher. Capital Enslavement is a kind of borderline genty groover. Alley breakdowns in this are pretty filthy. Raging Void is this syncopated
Yeah.
rhythmic groover.
Mm-hmm.
Guardians of Earth, epic prog track. See, this is the thing. There's so much variety on this album, which is what I think Sepultura does best.
Yeah.
The Pentagram is another proggy one. Autumn is like I've put new metally with death metal bits thrown in.
Mhm.
It's got like a Static X with blast beats kind of vibe to
Yeah.
it. Quadra is a pretty guitar interlude. Agony of Defeat is pretty much symphonic death metal again. And I don't know if this is a bonus track or not, but Fear, Pain, Chaos, Suffering.
I don't think
It's
so.
got that's got the singer Emily Barreto from the Brazilian rock band Far From Alaska. Cool stuff.
Yeah.
Cool to
Bring
hear
it
that on
on.
an album. And I just got to say, Quadra, of all of the Derek Green stuff, it's really exciting to hear them hit such a stride this late in him being in the band.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like an underdog story where it's like Sepultura's thrash stuff leading up to Roots is like a era defining capsule of just badass.
Yeah.
And people tend to discredit Derek Green because he kind of came off of Roots. They had a string of quite new metal esque albums, which, you know, any metal elitist asshole is going to write off completely because if you can twerk to it, it's not fucking metal, dude. Like,
I mean, let's be fair. You could twerk to pretty much anything. So
yeah, you can, and you know, I'm fortunate enough to have seen that happen. But
all right.
yeah, yeah.
When's that video coming out?
So that's on the OnlyFans.
Wow. Cool. That's what. So
chicka wow wow.
so yeah, Quadra is the so that's the so that if I'm doing my math correctly, that would be if you're wanting an album that both Eddie and I put in our top. Quadra is the only Derek Green era album that we both had in the top 7. So clearly, that's the way to go. For those of you,
spicy meatball.
it's very good. So, but not, in my opinion, the best Derek Green album. My number 5, The Mediator Between Head and Hands Must Be the Heart from 2013. Their 13th album. This one to me, so if you've noticed, I put the last 3 albums in declining order or whatever, you know, Quadra, then Machine Messiah, and now Mediator. So this one, obviously, because it came out in 2013, it's had more time to sort of marinate with me. And I liked things about it originally anyway. And it was a big deal when it came out because I'm like, oh, they're working with Ross Robinson again, who did Roots and, you know, numerous new metal albums and other things. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting because his production was always pretty brutal, brought out some brutality in a lot of these bands. And this is also one of those albums. Like the album is essentially supposed to be based on Metropolis. Was Metropolis a book before it was a movie? Because I know Metropolis is a movie from like the 20s, but it may have very well been based on a book. I'm not sure. Honestly, at this point, I don't, like I've said before, I don't care about the concepts. If there's a concept, cool. That's a little added bonus if the album is really fucking good, and this one is. So this is the first one. with Eloy Casagrande on drums, who apparently I'm a big fan of because I've been talking about him a lot, but he fucking rules. And he somehow brought some new life into this band, because while this album is not as varied as Machine Messiah or Quadra, there's a real cohesive quality to it. But at the same time, it's probably, I'm going to go on record and say maybe it's the most brutal album they ever did. Like just an overall brutality and not letting up. And there's some parts that aren't, brutal, but overall, like it is an aggressive album. Yeah. And on top of that, it's chock full of really fucking cool riffs. Like the number of pauses to go, that was fucking cool. There's too many to count on this album. And the things that I would argue about or complain about on albums prior to this, Kairos all the way back to, let's say, Nation, is that there was too much of an emphasis on, we're writing this riff and it revolves around two notes, and and it's very simple, and some of it is very reminiscent of things we already did. This album has so many riffs where it didn't do that to me. There's only one track on this album where I go, okay, that's very Sepultura-y, and that's Obsessed. Obsessed is a great song, but I would say if I had to pick a less good song on the album, it'd be that one. And it's only because it doesn't sound like anything necessarily new. But they just sound like a fucking reinvigorated band here. And it's always very exciting to me to hear this album, because I'm just like, I don't know what happened, but it's clear. It's clear that everybody is just firing on all cylinders here. And it just feels like a very inspired album, but also very heavy. And honestly, comparatively speaking, with Mediator, Machine Messiah, and Quadra, I almost feel like Machine Messiah and Quadra, they've now kind of become this version of Sepultura. This one, the Mediator, has that on it, but it also feels very tied to the past, to classic Sepultura. There's a weird like marriage. It's almost like they made this album and it was like kind of bidding farewell to that. Like, what? We're now beyond that. But it was great. And so it's got an interesting vibe for me when it comes to that, because it does sound, there's things that sound classic and things that sound moving forward for Sepultura. Like an extension of their sound, I guess. It takes their sound and they're extending it now. And I don't know. To me, it's like the most engaging album that they had made in 15 years. And it doesn't lose any of that from when I listen to it. So that's what I mean with like Quadra. Like, 5 years from now, will I feel the same way about Quadra? Will it have the staying power that Mediator has? And I don't know. So right now, in 2022, my number 5 is Mediator. The Mediator between Head and Hands must be the heart, which, yes, I said on the last episode when they announced that album title, I went, fuck off. but they've got the album to back it up. So it's, it's fucking great. And it's my favorite of the Derek Green era, which is weird to call it that because Derek Green's been in the band so much longer than Max was in the band. So it's, at this point, it's like one of those things where, I will admit that I prefer the Max Cavalera Sepultura stuff, most of it, but I'm not stuck in it to where I'm going to complain about it anymore. Because if you're still that hung up to where you're just complaining, you got more problems, I think, than just a band, because it's like, it's been long enough now. It's just like people that still, think that Rob Trujillo is the new guy in Metallica. And I'm like, he's the longest running bass player.
How long is it now? It's got to be 20 years next year, right?
20. Did he join 2002 or 2003? I think 2000. Yeah, you're right. 20 years next year, Rob's been in Metallica.
Fuck, dude.
Yeah.
When I got into Metallica, he was only in there for 7. Like, That puts into perspective how long I've been a fucking rock fan, dude.
And I just love it. And it's like, oh yeah. Sometimes I forget that you're 20 years younger than I am. And then you say things like that, and I go, "Oh yeah, you are 20 years younger than me," and apparently faking a British accent too, which we.
Yeah, that was so funny. Like, there was a dude in the comments, and like, I mean, you know, I'm from the southwest. I'm a Cornish boy. I won't say which county I'm in, but I'm just alluding to a little bit of mystery here. You know, plus I don't want people to know where I live because I'm a personality on the internet, and people do shitty things to these sorts of people. But
people know what town I live in, but it's fucking one of the biggest towns in the world. It's like, come find me, bitches.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that my surrounding neighbors all have guns. So, you know, take your chances, I guess.
I pretty much just have the default answer, and I responded to him last time. I basically said, "You ever seen the movie Hot Fuzz?" Yeah, that sort of place.
Yeah, you know what? Not to give away, you know, anything else, but this is the first time I thought about it. Like, you should go. Somebody at some point should have gone to a sign and replaced the C with a K, just because that would make me happy. You know. And then put the R backwards.
It's funny you should say this, because actually, I can't say it on the air because I would be doxing someone, but I will tell you afterwards.
Okay.
That there is something.
That's another band
that relates to that.
When are we tackling Korn? That's one that's got to happen at some point, because
We'll shuck some Korn at some stage.
I'm all about some Korn. We got a lot, like, you guys don't know, but behind the scenes, like, we have a schedule of bands, and it seems like it's never ending, because every time we have months planned out, and I'm like, oh, we haven't even talked about Korn. There's always like another band that we're like, well, we haven't done this one yet. I'm
still wrapping my head around the fact that we have yet to cover Pantera. Like, that's a band
we should do something about that, huh?
Yeah, we definitely should, dude.
We're giving signals for the podcasters that Pantera is coming soon.
Stay tuned.
Not saying when, but it will be coming, and then you will all be coming. Anyway, where are we now? Number 4.
Even we talked about the knob talk.
that was not specific to a knob. Women can have orgasms too, or maybe you haven't figured that out yet, Eddie.
I'm about to have my Ben Shapiro bit.
I'll have you know, actually, the female orgasm is a myth. It is created by the media to...
Oh my God, don't utter that dude's name on our podcast. Jesus.
He is an endless stream of content, despite the fact that everything he says is fucking awful.
It's one of those things that makes me so mad as a content creator out here, just trying my best. And I'm all like, if I just acted like a total douchebag all the time, I'd probably have 100,000 subscribers at this point. So,
I mean, there was that time. There was that time when WAP came out, and
I remember that.
And
wet ass P-word.
Yeah, he basically admitted on his own show that he's never sexually excited his wife.
Yeah, I just like that he kept saying P-word. Wet ass P-word.
There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house.
For those of you who haven't heard that, look up Ben Shapiro reads the lyrics to WAP. And it's just so funny because he's like, not only is he hilarious already, but he just sounds like a dude that's never been near one of those before. Yeah.
I said certified freak 7 days a week. Wet ass P-word. Make that pull-out game weep.
It's fucking. I can't give the rest away. Like I can't match his delivery. It's fire. But I love the fact that people remixed it and put him over the top of WAP, and it's
absolutely
the joke wrote itself.
We'll talk about that more when we do the Cardi B ranking.
Oh yeah.
Coming soon, maybe. I don't know. Never. I'm
fine with Cardi.
Cardi
Yellow.
Okay. Yeah, Cardi B's okay. She's not. I don't like her as much as some other ones, but she's fine.
Like back on track now. We got some rabid Sepultura fans out
Oh
there in
yeah,
the audience.
metal. We talk. Yeah, for those of you who are new, we do also listen to hip hop and other things. Um, that actually kind of ends there for me. It's like things that are metal, things that are rock, things that are hip hop. I don't really go further past that because then you get to territories where I just roll my eyes a lot at music, and I, you know, is what it is. I'm too old now to actually, I've admitted to myself that I have limitations, but I'm one
Fair.
of those people that I will tell you those limitations, as opposed to a lot of people out there on YouTube and other things that give their opinions, and their opinions aren't really worth very much because they won't acknowledge their own limitations and their own personal preferences. I've determined that the reason why I can never stop doing this, and by this I mean Cranked and Ranked and Old Head, is that 99% of the time when I hear other people talking about music, it drives me up the wall. I'm just like, think more about what you're fucking saying. just listen, try to listen to things in more of an open-minded way.
Yeah.
I'm talking to everything from people that like have way less subscribers than me, and so I'm sorry, all the way up to the unfortunate people that do reviews on Banger TV, which I think half of those people should not have those gigs. They should be doing something else. But that's just an opinion, because
this is where breaking news: Old Head and Eddie Sparxx have put Banger TV under siege requesting jobs.
It's just Old Head.
We should just remake Airheads, but it's us. And we raid Banger TV.
We break into the Banger studios and we just hold them hostage.
Give us a show on your fucking channel, Sam.
Yeah. You know what? You know what? Put the cameras on me. We're going to do an hour-long video on how great Saint Anger is, and you're going to like it.
Yeah, that movie script right there.
I mean, that's right. It's been done. I mean, what are we? We're remaking stuff.
We are remaking it, but we got to add in some humor to appeal to the kids. We got to throw in some Fortnite dances every now and again. Do some real cringe shit. Capitalize off those impressionable kid dollars. Know what I'm saying?
I'm on board for this. Anyway, I actually really like Banger TV. I especially like the main dude. I don't know why I can't remember his name right now, from Banger TV. He's great. Some of the other people, I roll my eyes at them a lot.
I just remembered the time while we're on the subject. I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but my girlfriend once sent me a video of a grandfather who had learned the floss dance from Fortnite.
Yep.
And at the time it was a new thing. It hadn't become cringe yet. So I was like, oh
no, it was cringe in the beginning. Come on.
It was fun. Not when I did it, learning it by attempting to floss dance to the entire 1987 Whitesnake album until I got it nailed.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Did you do it like real slow when it gets to that, that part and when it slows down in Still of the Night? Like, yeah, keep on, and you're all doing the slow.
Nope. Absolutely blisteringly fast for the entire runtime.
Anyway, the old flossy guy.
Yeah, basically she sent me a message and she said, "Hey, how come you can't do that?" And I was like, "I'll fucking show this guy right up." And I did, because I floss danced to Still of the Night ridiculously quickly for a full 6 minutes. So yeah. Where were we? Where are we at?
We're now on number 4, I believe. You're number 4.
That was a mega tangent, dude.
Which we're known to do that from time to time, folks. I apologize, but we're back on track now.
We are back on
grabbing
track.
the wheel. We're back on the Sepultura highway for your number 4.
So begins my holy 4 Sepultura albums, and my number 4 is Schizophrenia.
All right, cool.
Um, I've grown a vast appreciation for this album this past 2 weeks. Like
Mhm.
something about it. Like I've heard it before and I liked it, and then all of a sudden, after listening to the other two, other three, sorry, albums as well, I just thought, fuck, you can really hear them start to take shape already on this album. Like
Oh yeah, for sure.
this is the first real taste of where Sepultura was going to go forward. You know, Morbid Visions is kind of its own beast,
Mhm.
whereas this one, and this is because Andreas Kisser has shown up now,
Yeah.
so fucking game changer. So let's talk about it. Intro, another intro.
Yeah.
And I love the fact it's like, dude, wouldn't it be sick if we started the album with the fucking strings theme from Psycho and then
Yeah.
just follow it up with a big ass demon scream and then go just full thrash, and the rest of them probably just went, yeah, let's
Yeah.
fucking do it. Then you get from the past comes the storms, frantic thrash with far-
Originally called The Past Reborns the Storms.
really,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Because English wasn't their first language, and then they had some titles like that where I guess they didn't really know how to word them in the correct way. But I actually
love
kind of
that,
like that
though.
title better. The Past
Yeah.
Reborns the Storms.
It's got a cool ring to it as well.
Yeah, it does.
Past
I like
Reborns
it.
The storms. Yeah, it's just a chunky thrasher. Hell yeah, dude. To the Wall is like halftime. Halftime chug riffs are one of quite a few metal keys to my heart. Escape
You got
to
to
the
play
Void
what
is-
you got to do is play To the Wall, followed by Over the Wall by Testament, and then you
Oh.
listen to All of the Wall by Pink Floyd, and then Balls to the Wall by Accept,
Balls to the wall.
and then Off the
yeah.
Wall by Michael Jackson.
Oh shit, dude! There's so many Wall songs.
Then you listen to the Wallflowers, and that's when I'm leaving the party.
We've gone too far. He's had
kidding.
enough.
Like, they got some good tracks. Them Wallflowers peoples.
Damn Wallflowers, peoples. That was a hard transition out of that.
Sorry about that.
That's cool. Escape to the Void is just unrelenting thrash.
Yeah.
Inquisition Symphony. Love the scary synth at the start with that creepy acoustic guitar. Definitely the prog opus of the album. Screams Behind the Shadows is just incredible. Septic Schizo, frantic thrash goodness. The Abyss, obligatory classical acoustic piece to show that even though you're skull fucking the audience with riffage, you are in fact a man of culture. And then finally you get, finally you get R.A.P. Rest in Pain. Fucking brutal killer stuff. And then on the reissue, you get the absolutely killer re-recorded version of Troops of Doom.
Yeah.
I know it's not in the original track list, but fuck, this version bangs. So hell yeah, Schizophrenia, like really good thrash album.
Yeah. It's great. All right. Well, we're well into Banger Central here, and this is like me now. I'm talking about 4 of the most important metal albums in my life. Now, there's probably a good 50 or so that would fall into that category overall, but I think all 4 of these are in there because there are certain albums that just have resonated with me for such a long time and haven't lost any of their excitement. Some albums do. Some albums hit me real hard, and then later on I go, I don't really like it as much as I did. That's not the case for these 4 albums. My number 4 is Roots from 1996.
Nice.
And this album is, I think it's very underrated because a lot of people hate on it, and I guess I get it. I do, because a lot of people don't want things to ever change. And that's not a good way to be, people. I'm sorry. I'm just going to throw it out there because, there's a lot of shit that needs to change. And I don't think that Sepultura would have remained as interesting of a band if they had just put out the same albums over and over again. And Roots was the ultimate statement that they're not a band that gives a fuck about what the fans want, unless you're a fan that just wants some fucking quality shit. Because to me, like, starting Schizophrenia is great, but starting with Beneath the Remains all the way through to Roots, it is nothing but high quality shit. And there is a progression at every step of the way. And I talked about this in the last episode. The first time I heard Roots, I didn't really know what to think of it at first. But you know, I've always, even when I was young, you know, in 96, I was a, you know, senior in high school, but I think this came out after I graduated from high school. But I was already at the point where, like, I didn't want a band to give me the same album over and over again. And they didn't here. This album is heavy as fuck. That's the thing that I love about this album, is it is, it's really heavy. Like, you play this in your car loud enough, you're going to be in the car that goes boom. Like, that's what it's like. And I think that at this point, like, that the reason why their split was kind of depressing to me is because with Roots, to me, they just seemed like a completely unfuckwithable band. Like, they were on their way to, like, whatever it is they were going to put out, I was going to be all ears. And I love the fact that this one, they upped the tribal sounds a little bit with some of the stuff that they were doing, and other instruments, you know, the percussion and other instruments.
A little bit.
But you know what I mean? But also the fact that they lean way into the groove and the down-tuned guitars, you know, it almost, the simplicity of some of the riffs in this particular case for this album, it actually almost works in the tribal sense of it. You know, it's like, because a lot of the, you know, back in the day, if you're, you know, not in my country, because our past is bullshit, but other people's countries, you go back, you know, you trace your way all the way back with music, the tribes and everything, everything was pretty simplified, and it relied a lot on rhythm and basic. It was very, you know, so the fact that, bass. So for me, this always has that vibe where everything is perfect. The album is called Roots. It's got all of the different percussion and other instruments on it, and it stripped it down to where this bare sort of real, it's like heavy as I don't know, as what's the word I'm looking for? It seems like a very honest, just, this is it. You're not getting any bells and whistles, although, you know, I guess you could call a lot of that percussion and stuff that's added on bells and whistles, but it all works in such an amazing way for me on this album. And they continue to do things that I hadn't heard before, which is why it's great. There's songs in this album where I go, they've never done a song that sounded like that. And this was Ross Robinson, so it's got his stamp of just, like, it sounds very brutal. And to me, like, since Roots, there have been a lot of bands that have taken this sound and kind of run with it. Some very popular, some kind of unknown, but I think this album destroys anything any of those bands have ever done. Like, this is the epitome of this sound, which, if you want to call it new metal, that's fine, but I feel like that's selling it a bit short.
I think it's more groove metal in that.
But even then, if you take Roots and then you put, if you're leaning on new metal, you put it next to Korn, doesn't really sound that much alike, except for some of the riffs maybe. And then you want to put it groove next to, like, Pantera, that also doesn't really fit that much. It's its own thing. It's just Roots. It's like, and I think that's why I like it so much, because it's just such a unique statement of an album. And the only gripe, obviously, which is nothing that I don't really know where to go with this, but it's too long. But like I said earlier, I go through all the songs, and you get to the second half, and the second half leads into songs like Born Stubborn and Endangered Species, which are fucking bangers. And so I listen to it and I go, I don't know what song I would even cut from this. Like,
it's kind of like I said, it's it's one of those where it's like a commitment, but it's worth it when you're in the mood.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I could see this not because this doesn't vary as much as Chaos AD and Arise do. It has a mission and it kind of sticks with it for the most part. And this is the beginning of really doing some of them like 2-note riff kind of things, and which is cool here, but they start to rely on that way too much in albums that happen after this. But every time I hear this album, I think what I'm sure a lot of people out there think, and like, man, what would have happened if Max had stayed with the band and they had put out another record? Like, what would it have ended up being like Against? Or would they have turned another corner? Who knows what that corner would have been? It's a really unfortunate thing because, you know, from what I've read, there was already tension in the band. Like I said before in the last episode, it really seemed like you talked about Sepultura, or you would see press about Sepultura, and it almost seemed like it was being written like Max Cavalera's band, Sepultura. Like he was like the star of the show.
Yeah.
And whether or not he was trying to do that, or if it just happened that way and he just wasn't going to say no, because it's press and publicity. And so if they're like, oh, it's a cover story on Sepultura, but we're only going to put Max on the cover, you know, if you're doing really well as a band, do you go, no, I'm not going to do this? Or do you do it to promote the band and move forward? And I don't know. But then on top of that, there was that thing where his stepson was killed in I think it was in a car accident.
Yeah.
And
freak accident car. Yeah.
And then on top of that, the rest of the band comes to him and said, hey, we don't want your wife to be the manager anymore. It seems like a lot happening all at once, but as a very open thinker, I realized that I was not in the band at the time. I did not know any of them. I was not there. So I don't know. I've said this many times with bands that split up or have lineup changes. There's no way for us to know who the real asshole was. It's like, you know, there could be varying degrees of asshole that ended up, you know, splitting it. But it's unfortunate because I do think, like, you know, listening to Roots, I always think what would have been the next album. Because if it had been Soulfly, like what Soulfly was, it would have been kind of a disappointment. Soulfly is a fun album, the first Soulfly album, but
shut the fuck up.
Yeah. To be completely honest, if you have a song where one of your lyrics are no motherfucking Hootie in the Blowfish, then that got kind of tiresome. A lot of bands were doing that shit where they just talk shit about other popular music. And I'm like, dude, Hootie and the Blowfish is not trying to be metal. Why are you mad at them? They're honestly making the suburban, you know, parent rock that they want to make. Like, just don't. Why are you mad at them? I don't understand that. But anyway, so Roots is great. It's a bittersweet album for me because I love it so much. But it does, you know, as a fan that prefers this, you know, these 4 albums that I'm going to be talking about, because if you're paying attention, we've got 4 Max albums that I'm going to be talking about in a row. Yeah, it does make me kind of go, I wish I could have found out, but maybe it all worked out for the better. I'm assuming for the guys in the 2 bands, well, you know, whoever's playing with Max and then the rest of Sepultura, if they really didn't get along, then I guess it did work out better for both of them. So anyway, that's my multiple cents on Roots, my number 4.
Cool. So here we are at the bronze medal, number 3.
Sweet.
Now, we have the same top 3.
We do. Will they be in the same order?
That is the question.
That is the question, sir. Let's find out. After this. No, I'm just kidding. No, really, after this. I'm literally gonna put a commercial in right there.
Yeah.
Bitch, pay me.
Do you know what I thought of then? Have you seen I Think You Should Leave?
No.
Oh, it's
it's
fucking
good.
Yeah, it's like a sketch show. Tim Robinson, he's the guy that does it. and there's so many skits on there, but there was one I was watching yesterday, and it's like a lawyer advert. It's like, has this ever happened to you? But he just goes through this ridiculously elaborate thing. Or is it, you ever had two guys come over to your house and replace your toilet with a joke toilet that's just got a tiny hole that's just for farts? And then they start running around your house, and then you try to join in, and they say, you're not part of the turbo team. Till you're part of the turbo team, you don't run. Walk slowly. Has this ever happened to you? And it's like, it's just stuff like that. It's hilarious.
That's funny. I think he used to write for SNL. I think that's where he came from. I haven't seen it, but that's one that I'll definitely check out at some point.
There's another one where he's on a ghost tour, and the dude, it says to him, this is the adult tour in the evening, so we can say whatever the hell we want. And everybody's like kind of there, like taking it lightly, and he goes, jizz. It's like, and they're like, what? You said we could say whatever the hell we want. So did any of these fucking ghosts ever just jump out of the wall, do a huge cum shot? That this isn't what we meant. Like, but he just keeps taking it too far. But yeah.
Well, we made it there, folks.
Anyone watching? Anyone watching? If you ain't seen it, it's on Netflix. I think you should leave. It's really
all
fun.
right.
Bye. Yeah. So number three, Beneath the Remains is my number 3.
All right. Cool.
And yeah, it's pretty fucking good death thrash album, dude. Like,
what?
like, nah, but I know that sells it short, but goddamn, dude, like Beneath the Remains, pretty yet ominous intro that explodes into this just full on assault of pure aggression.
I have to ask you, and maybe this will ruin the song for you for the rest of your life. When you hear the acoustic intro, do you ever think it's about to be Close My Eyes Forever by Lita Ford and Ozzy Osbourne?
Oh, yeah, no, I hear it now. Yeah.
It starts off, I'm all, baby, I get this. It's like, it's literally like, and it varies it up to where it doesn't last very long. But that first like 10 seconds or so, I'm all like, is this Lita Ford or Sepultura?
Yeah. You know, I thought it sounded familiar. Now that you've put those two together, I definitely, yeah, it's like the same exact chord.
Lita Ford album ranking. We got to do that at some point.
Hell yeah, we do.
Mm-hmm.
There's a poster of Lita Ford right over there out of shot.
Awesome.
I'm pretty cool, aren't I?
I think we've already established this many times over. Yes.
Hell yeah. That is the status quo around here. So yeah, I mean, Beneath the Remains, one of my favorite parts of the whole album is that like dan 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 dan,
yeah.
Dan, like, and it's just such a simple little part, but with how fucking quick the drums are, it's like,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I've always really liked that.
Crushes. Inner Self has got to be one of, if not my all-time favorite Sepultura song. Like, holy shit, every single second of this song is killer. And
yeah,
you all know, long-time listeners of the show know that I love slow, mid-pace chug riffs with a slow groove but a fast double kick under it. So when that like,
yeah,
oh, you ever seen those like try not to headbang challenges?
Yeah.
Like if I fail, if that comes up, I'm fucked. I can't do it. Stronger Than Hate. This album just keeps giving pure, unadulterated fire. Like this song is like Seasons era Slayer on steroids. It's nuts. Mass Hypnosis, the start-stop chugging in this song again. Chef's kiss. Sarcastic Existence is pounding, brutal, evil.
I love that song so much, but the title is always, I've always tried to, in my brain, think of like, what is that? What sarcastic existence? Are you're existing? You're just like, you know what? I'm just going to keep living, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I hear this song reminds me a little bit of the band Death. Not only in it, like, there's little parts here and there where I think that's very Chuck Schuldiner, but you know, even down to the title, this song title could have been on a Death album.
Mhm.
Um, Slaves of Pain, just more Slayer on roids with an extra side of chug.
Mhm.
Lobotomy is frenzied brutality, intent on hitting you with as many notes as possible. Hungry is just fucking gnarly, and Primitive Future is just one last blast of crazed guitars and drumming with
Did you mention
axe.
mass hypnosis?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I give it a chef's kiss for the
Oh,
start
okay.
stop chugging.
I don't know where my
Um,
brain was, but that's like I think that might be my favorite one on the album is Mass Hypnosis. I love that song.
that is a great song. But yeah, I just love the fact that this album is so it it varies in tempo, yet it doesn't veer too hard out of the intensity. Like the
Mhm.
entire album, this is one of those albums that has a legitimate scary aura to it, where it's like it's not something I put on in my car if I'm driving alone at night down a road. You know,
Yeah.
there's just even down to the album cover, there's just something cursed about it. Like it's
Yeah.
just so fucking it's so heavy, it's scary. Like
People always bring up that wasn't the original album cover, but I like the way things worked out. Like for Beneath
yeah.
the Remains, that album title, that album cover is more appropriate than the one that Obituary would use for Cause of Death.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
and
it
vice
worked out for the
versa.
better.
It seems like things worked out well because I actually like the Sepultura album cover more. So I mean,
I actually if I remember right, we included it in the thrash album covers. We gotta do
yeah, we
another
talked
thing
about
on
that was a
album art,
while
dude.
ago.
Yeah.
Check that out. There's an episode where we do our top 5 or 10 thrash metal album covers. It was just thrash
Yeah.
metal. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was
That
just
was like over a year ago for sure.
yeah. We gotta do another one of those, dude. That was fun.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, this album scarily heavy is how I would describe this album.
Mm-hmm.
And whew, it's one of those where you kind of come out of it feeling like you've been to hell and back, where it's like, fuck, dude, they
Yeah.
just hit me with like more notes and just straight up speed than I think I was ready for. But I loved every second at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that is my description and review, I guess, of Beneath the Remains.
Awesome.
By all means, you
I
have the floor.
I agree. It's an amazing album. Therefore, it is not my number three.
Ah,
My number three is Arise from 1991.
I
Um,
am surprised.
yeah, which is, I mean, it's surprising to me because it's it's not my favorite, but it's a very important album for me because it's the first one I ever heard, and I love it. Uh, it is a progression of their sound from Beneath the Remains, but not crazy progression.
Hmm.
They add some new elements. It's still a very thrash album.
Yeah.
But I'll get to why it's number three and not higher. So it starts off with the fucking 1-2 punch of Arise and Dead Embryonic Cells, like two of the best Sepultura songs back to back on this. And then you get Desperate Cry, which is also fucking amazing. And I like the fact that with Desperate Cry, they've now started slowing things down even more. Like that
Yeah.
point, I think that's the slowest song they had done, but still
Mhm.
very heavy. And they've also started incorporating different sounds in this album, which they would
Yeah.
continue to do. So when you're talking about that, those three songs in particular, Arise, Dead Embryonic Cells, Desperate Cry, and on a couple others in the first half too, some of those tracks are far superior to anything on Beneath the Remains. But as an entire album, Beneath the Remains has absolutely no weaker tracks on it for me. I think that is fucking killer from beginning to end. This is also killer from beginning to end, but the second half of the album loses a little bit of the excitement for me. And a really big one, that's what she said, is Infected Voice, which it's always bothered me that it's just the riff from Arise basically played backwards. So Arise is Infected Voice, same two notes. They literally picked the same two notes, wrote a song with almost the exact same tempo. It's like you could just go one right into the other and you would just think it's Arise Part 2. Now, I don't know if that was on purpose. Like, did they book in the thing and try to write a song using the same notes to make it feel like this is a beginning and an end? Like if that's the case, that's fucking cool. But it still always bothers me because I'm all like, oh man, this song is really cool and has a lot of energy. But I'm always just, from a writer, a person that's written a lot of songs, I go in and I go, they just liked those two notes and they wrote another song with those two notes as the main riff. And it's not as good of a song as Arise. It's still really good and a great album closer, but it's just that thing about the second half of this album. I like it a lot. It's still better than most metal albums of the time, which of the time, you have to remember, Arise came out, I think, a month before Nevermind by Nirvana, something like that. Wow. It was around the same time. So can you imagine Arise coming out and Nevermind? In fact, there's an episode of Headbangers Ball that I have where Nirvana are the guest and Sepultura are the guests. They both are in the studio. I don't mean, obviously they weren't there at the same time, but it's that infamous one where Kurt has the yellow dress ball gown on.
Yeah.
But then before them, you get Sepultura are on talking about Arise. And it's just so crazy. Dude. We've said it many times. The early 90s are fucking awesome because there's so much good shit that was happening that wasn't in the same genre, but you're getting
across the board
equal amounts of quality shit from all these different artists. And it's great. But I had to get nitpicky because as special as this album is to me, when I break things down, I go, yeah, I think that out of the two thrashier masterpieces that they did, Arise and Beneath the Remains, I think Beneath the Remains is stronger. So Arise ends up here at number 3. The real question is, obviously we're not matching up on all of them, but will we match up on our number 1? Will we after this break? No, I won't do it. That's too many breaks. There are some people that put up videos and there's like commercials every like 2 minutes. And I'm like, come on, are you expecting everyone to keep watching this? Anyway, number 2.
Yeah, it's cool. So I can already tell you that I think we have a completely different top 3, even though we got the same, because my number 2 is Chaos AD.
Okay.
And I will say, for a moment there during the week, my top 2 swapped.
Yeah.
Because I initially had Chaos AD as number 1. And I'm going to get into why it's such a great album. So, Refuse Resist, 6-song, great groove, anthemic groove metal song. Holy shit. Like that, this song just gets the place jumping, Territory. Fun story about Territory. When I first got a drum kit for Christmas when I was like 15, my family had no idea I had been playing the drum kit at school on, my breaks at school as much as I had been. So when I busted this out within a few hours of owning a kit, they were fucking stunned. They even got me a double pedal, and I remember just like going, and they were like,
"He's a natural."
If only I'd practiced my rudiments as much as I'd practiced the opening of Territory, but.
I mean, drum-wise, the opening to Territory to me is up there with Hot for Teacher as like the coolest like drum intros in songs. Like just where it's just so like, what song is fun. There's no mistaking the beginning of Territory,
Yeah, I've oftentimes tried to learn the intro for Hot for Teacher, and I don't know if I've got the patience to figure out what's a kick drum and what's a tom in that scenario.
Yeah, it's all like it's all moving too quickly.
Well, that's the thing of like, all the tutorials and stuff that try to show me what's happening, they don't have a gong drum. They don't have like a mounted kick drum to replicate that. So I just hear this confusing thing of the toms happening when they're not supposed to be there, and I just think, what the fuck is this intro? I'll just kind of like, I'll just do triplets until the cymbals come in. Fuck it.
Has Alex never like shown on a video how he played it, or like he's got to do that at some point?
I'm sure he has, but it's just such a fucking like it goes on for a long ass time too.
Yeah.
Before he just picks a steady beat to go off of. So I just kind of like just swing the kicks and throw in the odd tom every now and again.
That would be an interesting ranking, the best drum intros to songs ever. Two of them we just talked about.
Yeah. But yeah, just going back to Territory, man. I mean, it's one of those songs that has so many different parts and every single part kills.
Yeah.
Like there's not a weak moment on here, and I especially love that that fill into that riff.
Yeah,
and it again, as I've said before, Max's voice. How does a human make that noise? you know?
Yeah.
Slave New World, man, 3 bangers in a row. Holy shit. Amen. Just grinding heaviness. And it kind of reminds me of what Fear Factory would do on Demanufacture with songs like Body Hammer and that sort of thing. Love that sort of riff. Chaos is this like native tribal jam sort of thing. And you can hear them beginning to incorporate these Brazilian indigenous things into their music. But it hasn't become the whole vibe yet,
Yeah.
There's still thrashy moments, there's groove moments. If you want variety, this is the album, and this is why it was at the top. But
I've always really liked in Kiowas, because when I was, when this album came out, I listened to it a lot, and I'd listened to it a lot in headphones. And however that song was recorded with, the microphones and the mixing and everything, it sounds like you're sitting outside with them.
Yeah.
And I've always loved how they, what?
Like you can hear seagulls in it as well. It's
you
like
can hear birds and other shit. But like, I just, for some reason, however it's recorded and mixed, it just always feels like you're just sitting there with them. And I've always really liked the way that sounded.
It's so cool, like after 4 ridiculously heavy songs as well, to have that. Yeah. And then go into Propaganda, dude. Like, oh my God. Like this song, especially that breakdown, that is just the sound of bones being smashed.
The way that song begins, that's a really great example of stuff that Sepultura did that a lot of other bands didn't do that I love, is Andreas would do those discordant things. Because other bands that weren't metal would fuck around with discordant, leads and melodies and stuff. But there's not a lot of metal bands, especially at that point, that did that. And I feel like that was all Andreas Kisser, because it always seemed to be him that was playing those parts. And so I love that they incorporated. I've said it a million times. You throw in cool noises, I'm just like, cool noises always go a long way for me.
And then like after all of that, you get Biotech as Godzilla, which is like hardcore crossover thrash.
Yeah.
Nomad is groove metal done right. We Who Are Not As Others is getting quite cerebral.
Yeah.
Manifest has some real Sabbathy grooves in it.
Dude, I love that song, but it's cool because it's like nothing else that they had done. So there's a lot of songs on this album that are like nothing they had ever done, but just the fucking riff after the Bobby Onami, when that kicks in, I get chills every fucking time. I'm like, that is so fucking good. It's just awesome.
And then, something really interesting to me is the song The Hunt, which is, it's like an alternative rock song through a metal lens, like how it's played. It's almost like it's another case of they've not done anything like that at that
Well, no,
point.
that's a cover song though. You know that, right?
I did not, and I am outing myself as uncultured.
I want to say that's a New Model Army song. I think that's the band. It's maybe it's not New Model Army. I don't really know, but that's actually a cover song, which
makes sense.
Which is, but it's still, its inclusion on the album just it adds to that sort of, we're not following the rules of how things are done because, and they're one of those bands around that time that were kind of like, Metallica and other bands that would do covers and make them their own, to the point where I don't even want to hear the original version of this song. I want to hear Sepultura's version.
Man, it's finally closing out with clenched fist.
Yeah.
Dissonant, wild closer. So this album fucking rules, and it's stood the test of time. I mean, it turns 30 next year, and you can still hear the influences of this album to this day.
Also, it's a perfect example of how shit from the early 90s has aged remarkably well, where you put this up against anything today and it blows it away. So
yeah, with you all the way. So yeah, that is my number 2.
Cool. You were right. Completely different top 3. My number 2 is Beneath the Remains from 1989. Beneath the Remains, I kind of already did my review of this with the last one, talking about the differences between Arise and Beneath the Remains. But Beneath the Remains is them perfecting their thrash sound. It's fast as fuck. Scott Burns producing. Scott Burns also did Arise, but I love the Scott Burns production sound of that time, late 80s, early 90s. Love it. I fucking love it. It's a vast improvement from Schizophrenia. If you guys remember, Schizophrenia was in the last episode in my lower half. I like that album a lot, but the Sepultura style is fully formed on Beneath the Remains. Yeah. Whereas the first major ingredients of what would continue with Sepultura start here, which they've always kept a little bit of, except for maybe Roots, a little bit of the thrash every once in a while, and sometimes to varying degrees on later stuff. But the kind of riffs that they wrote at this point, like the Sepultura sound is here. To me, this is one of the best thrash metal albums of the 80s. If you make a top 10, this has got to be in there. It's fantastic. Absolute classics, chock full of killer riffs and killer songs. It's literally an all killer, no filler album to me. Like, it's just, but you're right. It is like intense. Once you're out of it, you're just like, man, that was a trip right there.
Hell ride.
Yeah. And it had to go at number 2 because it's just, for this particular Sepultura sound, I think that they perfected it here. Whereas Arise almost to me feels like it's an amazing album, but parts of it feel transitional. And yeah, it's just, I think we're getting to the point now where, like, I listen to in order, Beneath the Remains ends, Arise starts, and I'm like, fuck yeah. But in the second half of Arise, I'm already like, when are we getting to fucking KSAD? because that shit's coming for me as well. Because that's my number 1. But first, we got to get to your number 1, which it's perfect because we're kind of in the same zone here. Early cool. 90s Sepultura ended up being the number 1 for each of us, really. So let's do it.
Cool. So my number 1 is Arise from 1991. One of the last, big albums of the thrash era, I would say, it being 91.
Yeah.
And
of proper thrash, yeah.
Yeah. And holy shit, this is one of the albums I think of when I think like ridiculously fast thrash. Mm-hmm. Even though there's a lot of different stuff on it, Arise itself, the song, it is like one of those that when I listen to it, I'm like, fuck, how? Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that riff. I've tried to. I mean, I'm not really a lead player when it comes to guitar, but I can play pretty decent, rhythm guitar, especially
Yeah.
for like metal. But fuck, dude, like the control you need to keep that riff tight
Yeah.
is insane. Like without it sounding flubby or muddy or missing any notes. Like, oh, it's so good. And then immediately following it up with Dead Embryonic Cells. Now, here's the thing. It's funny that we did Public Enemy last time because this song appears in GTA 4. The
Hey.
Lost. And here's the thing. It's in the Lost and Damned expansion game that they added onto it, where you play as a guy from like a biker gang. But
Yeah.
they changed the hardcore station, so the station that would play hardcore crossover thrash and that sort of thing, because it's loosely based on New York, Liberty City. So there's a
Yeah.
hardcore station in the like add-on where you played as a biker. There's a death metal station in its place, and it's hosted by Max Cavalera himself,
Oh, wow.
playing himself. And I think it's called like the Blood, Fire, War, Hate, Death Metal Show. And it's like, so it's really funny and self-aware, but Dead Embryonic Cells is on it.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I heard Dead Embryonic Cells, and like, that that bit in there is like, I'm gesturing to do the chef's kiss without it becoming obnoxious, but holy fuck.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, you get Desperate Cry. Like, the groove in this is nasty, with a G and two R's, because I needed a new word for how killer this is. Murder is as frenzied and heavy as the title suggests. Subtraction. I love when they hit you with a burst of skank beats and follow it up with the same kind of riff but halftime. Like, again, that tempo variation is a hallmark of Sepultura's thrash stuff.
Yeah.
Altered State. I feel like I'm in a fucking action movie set in the jungle to this song. Like, when it opens up, I feel like I'm in some sort of boat on the Amazon waiting to get ambushed. Fucking Under Siege. Regnum Irae. I hope I've said that right. The huge reverb on that China symbol is a yes from me.
Yeah.
Meaningless Movements is groove thrash goodness, and Infected Voice, one last flurry of fuck yeah-ness, even if they are kind of plagiarizing themselves. To be honest, I picked Arise for the top spot because it kind of has, in the way Chaos AD has a little bit of everything. Arise leans into the thrash a little bit more.
Yeah.
I've really come to love their thrash stuff, but it still has the variety there as well. So that's what kind of tipped the balance in the end for me. But these top three, I'll extend it to the top four as well. But the top three, holy shit, they were on good shit. Like,
yeah. No, there's no denying that those three, especially Beneath, Arise, and Chaos, are three absolute classics. So brings me to my number one, which obviously is Chaos AD from 1993. This is
on the streets.
This is a really great example of an album that is very important to me on a personal level. But when I take a step back and listen to all of the things that happen on it, I go, this is also very good. Arguably, it doesn't matter that they moved away from thrash with this, because the quality of what it is ridiculous. The build up to this album. So when this album came out, there was a build up for me as a fan. I was already a fan, and I remember they did I think it was an episode of Headbangers Ball. It may have been 2 different episodes, but they did these things where they did, well, now we're going to check in with Sepultura at the studio. And I remember they played a clip of 2 songs. You heard a little bit of Amen, and I was just like, oh fuck. And then you heard a little bit of Biotech's Godzilla. Both of those things, I was just like, this is going to be the fucking best album I've ever heard. And honestly, at the time, it came out. And I remember that I had friends that had more money than me. They were metalheads that had, one of my friends in particular was the guy that when an album came out, he already had it the day it came out. Sometimes it took me a week or 2 or more to go get it. But I remember my friend had it, bought it the day it came out, which back in the day, that was every Tuesday is when new albums came out. He came to school Wednesday with it and was playing it. We had a drama class. I was in drama. And we had a little stereo, and the teacher let us put on music sometimes. And we just like sat there around. We were all in a little semicircle around the speakers, just like fucking A, man. Like it, and I still get the same sort of vibes from it, because this album, once again, just like with the 1-2 punch from Arise, like this one with Refuse Resist into Territory is ridiculous. Like Territory is an amazing song. And I just love the fact that this is a progression, but also, I don't know what it is. They like I said before, they didn't give a fuck. They leaned on whichever style that they were feeling. And that's I think that's amazing. But with Chaos AD, the number one reason why I'm like, it has to be number one is because quality of the album, absolutely great. I wouldn't change anything about it. It's amazing. It's a classic. But all of the Sepultura that's happened after that, like this is where the big chunk of that sound starts. Like they had a little bit, they made, the thrashiness, that's got that thrash Sepultura sound. But I think more so what they've continued to do relies on Chaos AD. Like that's so you're talking about a band that continued to put out stuff for another 25 whatever years, 6 to 7 years. It's been a while. It all the bulk of that, it comes from this. This is the seed. This is the beginning of it all. And so when you're talking about a band like that, when you're really taking into account everything they did from Morbid Visions all the way to Quadra, Chaos AD, I think, has the most resonance as an album that, as a band, you still hear little bits of, that's when they fully, I guess, became Sepultura, was Chaos AD. And also, I have to say that this album sounds amazing once again. Instead of, this one's Andy Wallace, which Andy Wallace he was a major label. He did all sorts of major releases. I think the big claim to fame before this was he mixed Nevermind by Nirvana. He wasn't the engineer, but he was the guy that mixed it. But I just love the fact that they turn the groove aspect up. There's some punky elements in this album. All sorts of songs that were nothing like they had done before. Whereas Arise had like parts that sounded different than what they were doing before. You take songs like Kiowas, We Who Are Not As Others, and Manifest, totally different from anything they'd ever done before. And just the fact that they were taking chances with even just the idea of what a song is. Because We Who Are Not As Others, that's the only thing that's said in the song. And it's like it's a little journey that it takes you on, but there's no verse, chorus. Manifest, no verses or choruses at all. It's speaking. And then, it's a fucking amazing song. And of course, Kiowa's acoustic, all of a sudden a full on just acoustic and percussion and everything. Like it's just so fucking good. To me, this is a masterpiece, but I would say that the reason why this is so great to me is because it's a masterpiece of just just metal. Like you don't
Yeah.
need to connect this to anything else. There are albums that's like, this album is classic and one of the best death metal albums. This is one of the best thrash metal albums. This is one of the best groove metal albums. Chaos AD to me is like, just, you can't assign any other thing to it. It is just a classic metal album, not classic metal. See what I'm saying? Like no terms really necessarily fit with this album. And then Roots would be kind of like that too, but I think that has some little flaws. But Chaos AD to me has absolutely no flaws, and it's still as thrilling as ever every time I listen to it. And just the way the album plays out with all of the elements they decided to put into this album and didn't give a fuck. More bands should think like Sepultura did at that point. I wish that they did. Like, and not only that, like this was around the time that you could still have a career and make money being in a band. So there was a lot more at stake than just like, oh, we're a band that doesn't make any money. What if this album also doesn't make any money? It's like, but they still just went with their gut and did what they wanted to do and didn't just do the same shit over and over again. And I know that like I've beaten this topic to death, but like so many bands are just fine with doing the same old thing and nobody takes any chances anymore. And it's sad to me, but that's my old man brain being like, things were better back in the day. But they were, musically speaking, they were better. Especially in the early 90s, even the late 80s. I'll throw that in there too. But Chaos AD is just the ultimate expression of this band, a badass band doing whatever the fuck they want and making the most successful album of their career on top of it. So it's great. Chaos AD is amazing. It's my number one. That brings us to the conclusion of Sepultura. 3, 2, 1. Yeah!
We did it! Yeah.
We're always on the YouTube video. We're always a bit off, but you get the idea.
Hey, it sounded great from where I sat.
I know. It's if only everybody could watch it from your perspective. But
as a gift for me.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's it. That's our Sepultura album ranking. We obviously we just did full length, so we didn't talk about Bestial Devastation, but I feel like that can be easily kind of put in with Morbid Visions, and was eventually. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. Sepultura is an amazing band. Still is. I'm saying still is. They've won me back. It doesn't have the same feeling to me as the original stuff, but they're a band that I care a lot about what they're doing, and that says something, because there's when it comes to classic bands, there's really only maybe a dozen that I can think of that when they put something out, I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is going to be. Other bands, even though I like them, I go, I kind of have an idea what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But Sepultura are not that band, and they really never have been. And that aside from that little chunk of time that we talk about where they got a little too samey with shit, they are, there's a reason why they're one of the most popular metal bands in the world. So that's it. And then I don't know if this video is going to blow up just like the other one did, but if it does, thank you for watching. Put comments down below if you've made it this far. Peanut butter platypus to all of you that made it this far. And next episode is going to be fun, but a little different.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's real. I mean, that's where I think we broke 2 hours on this episode. So maybe we can,
we did.
Well, almost. So, but we had a lot to say with Sepultura. They're a band that you can't just sum it up real quickly, because there's a lot to talk about. But we thank you for being here with us as always. Eddie, do you have any closing remarks?
Damn, dude, it's a good discography.
Yeah, I'm glad we finally got around to them. There's plenty of other bands that are past due, and we'll get to them eventually.
Hell yeah.
But that's why that's what you can be. You can rest assured that your buddies, Old Head and Eddie Sparxx, are going to be here for a little while doing these rankings.
Old Head and Eddie.
Oh yeah, Old Head and Eddie, but we'll put it in the Ed and Eddie font.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. Never even seen that show. I just know it's a show.
It's a good show. It's one of my generation's claims to greatness.
Or there's like who was it that said? I wonder if it was Alasdair Williams that said Old Head and Young Ed.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like that too. Yeah, your Young Balls. That's a really good one too. All right. Anyway, before we go back into that territory. Wrapping it up, territory. That was, see what I did there? Territory. Anyway, Sepultura
very nice
song. All right, that's it. Thank you very much for listening or watching, depending on what you're doing. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time. And as usual, I'm going to throw it over to Eddie Sparxx to take. Oh, that was a big old squeak right there. Throwing it over to Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
Later, dude. Later, this. I was doing a Chaos AD kind of thing. I thought it would work.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, it's not my best work. It's not as good as it's not as good as the last one where I did dude. Later, dude.
That's true. They can't all be winners.
They can't all be zingers.
Oh, dude. That's a good ending.
Good. Yeah, you're right. That's good. Bye.
Yeah. Later.